Hey guys, this is Naveen here. Welcome back to Naveen Automation Labs once again. And I think we are live now. Can just anyone confirm that are you able to see me properly and are you able to hear me properly? So let other folks also join and then we will start accordingly. So we have one very special webinar today. I'll tell you what exactly this webinar is all about. But something very interesting topic, and I'm sure that it will help you guys a lot in terms of testing, in terms of test automation and everything. So yeah, I can see people are joining. Rakesh, hi Rakesh, hi Dheeraj, Ankit, Rahul, Meenakshi. Great, thanks for confirming, Dheeraj. So let's wait for a couple of more minutes, and okay, then we start. Let me quickly check. Are
Okay,
we
then
okay? So I think yeah, we can start now. Okay, great. So, thank you so much for joining this webinar today, guys. Today we have 1 hour session with the co-founder of testRigor. We have already had one session with Artem earlier, and you must have seen my videos also and my series also on testRigor, especially with how exactly testRigor is working in terms of automation. How can we easily write the test cases and everything in simple plain English sentence, and then you adjust. The tool is so smart enough; it will automatically capture everything and then perform the action exactly on the web pages. In fact, you can do API automation, you can do mobile automation, and the web automation. The tool is quite stable, amazingly great, and very smart tool in terms of writing the keywords and writing the plain English sentence. You just need to maintain properly, and then it's good to go. In fact, there are other integrations are happening with selector sub and other things also, like just to make your life very easy. You just need to write the things and then that's it, and then you don't need to worry about any coding skills, no coding, nothing. So with this note, we have Artem today. So let me add Artem also in the stream. So thank you so much, Artem, for joining us today. So I was talking about testRigor once again. We have already published a couple of videos and one live also, and I'm pretty much sure a lot of people they are aware of testRigor now, how exactly testRigor working, and then what are the different capabilities of testRigor. I'm pretty much sure that people are liking it and using it. So the today's topic is about how to learn test automation and how to learn the right way of learning the automation from manual to automation, and what are the different ways of writing the things with good examples and everything. So Artem, yeah, thank you so much once again for joining this webinar, and the stage is yours now.
Thank you, Naveen, for having me today. I appreciate it. And hello, everyone. And today we will be talking about easiest way to learn test automation and some test automation concepts. And without further ado, let me start sharing my screen.
Okay. Yeah, we can see a screen. Perfect.
All right, great. Okay, first of all, what are we going to talk about today? We will be going to talk about UI automation specifically for web and mobile. Of course, there are all other car types of automation out there. We will not be touching today. And well, automation is still a big deal. Shockingly enough, today in 2022, 70% of all test cases are still executed manually, which is absolutely shock to me, but it is what it is. And it results in 1.7 trillion in losses due to bugs in software just because stuff cannot be executed fast enough because it's all manual. And you say, okay, so we already have Selenium from 2004. What's the problem? Well, it's a little bit of a challenge. To write 1,000 tests, it will take huge amount of time, and it will basically completely kill the maintenance. And usually, what people ending up with if either a lot of manual testing, which is like if you think about 70% of the majority of the cases, this is the case. That basically leads to bugs in production, longer release cycles, and not enough coverage, or automation where it's just gigantic amount of maintenance, teams of people just doing maintenance. The tests are not stable enough to be able to be executed in CI/CD as a gateway, because 5% of on average of the test will always break. It's gigantic costs and very slow to create. Anyway, so this is why we came up with testRigor, and I'll walk you through how can you use testRigor and for free, and why it might be beneficial, even though you will in future use Selenium or something like that. So first of all, why did we come up with testRigor? As you can see, there's same test for testing login on the left and Selenium on the right with testRigor. As you can imagine, it's just order of magnitude less to write in testRigor. It's very, very straightforward. But most importantly, testRigor does not depend on details of implementation. Here, as you can see in Selenium, there are reliance on IDs, names, and even this ridiculous XPath, which would change most probably going forward, breaking the test. Whereas in testRigor, as soon as you can log in and there is still welcome computer on the screen, it will continue to be executed successfully. So that's basically the reason why we created it, just to allow everyone to be able to do automation. All you need to do is to understand automation concepts and make tests actually stable and require as little maintenance as technically possible. All right, so that's actually a big deal. This test maintenance challenge is the problem, and it is the reason why it's only 70%. 70% are not automated today. Only 30% of automation is because at some point, while you building tests, the number of tests is so huge. Well, it's not that huge one. Also, about 350 on average, might be more or less depending on the project. But around that number, it is a full-time job to just maintain the tests. Whereas in testRigor, people just spend 200 times less time maintaining tests, and this is why we are able to actually achieve 100% automation. Anyway, so one of the interesting characteristics of testRigor is it is plain English. So it is probably the easiest way on the market how you can learn automation and play with some automation concepts. Today, we will be, I'll show you probably a short demo, and I will talk about those are actually automation concepts. And the good thing about that is that it doesn't matter where you learn automation concepts, they are exactly the same across the board. You switch to any other tool, it literally be exactly the same thing because concepts are the same. Tools might differ, but the concepts will always stay exactly the same, regardless of the tool. And this is what we will be talking about. So basically, like a classical way of learning automation is basically you have to learn programming language first, and then you learn concepts of automation, oftentimes on the job, because even then you learned programming language, and when you learned some framework like Selenium, something like that, you still might not understand the automation concepts. Oftentimes people start learning automation concepts on the job, which is, to me, is very much reverse. It actually should be other way around. People should start first understanding automation concept and then learn specific tools. And then you slowly start build some tests, and then you just drown in test maintenance. So we believe the proper way of doing it is you need to learn automation concepts first. It's not that a big deal. And then build tests as quickly as possible. No time spent on test maintenance up to a point where you can actually, I can show you how to make things such that you can copy paste even your manual test cases and make them executable. But point being, concepts and being able to play with those concepts and learn the concepts as the easiest. We believe that the easiest way to do it is with testRigor. You can do it for free. And once you learn it, you're then free of doing whatever you would like. All right, so without further ado, I'll talk about a couple of things. There are basics of test automation and there are best practices. I'm in no mean or shape claim that I will go about all of concepts and best practices, especially best practices, maybe many of those. But I believe I will mention the most important ones, or ones of the most important ones, which are usually should be enough to create 99.9% of the tests. All right, so what are key properties of automated tests? First of all, then you switching from manual testing to test automation, where like you are introduced to those automated concepts, and certain things are different. Even with the same exact test case that you used to execute manually, then you start to automate that test case. You start to understand that you have to do it differently compared to how you would do it manually. And probably the most important concept, which oftentimes people learn the hard way, is repeatability. So if your tests run once and nothing changes, then the test should be able to run again successfully. So that is an important stuff. It sounds very simple and kind of obvious, but when you start doing it, it's actually not, and it involved certain other things like unique test data generation, use of variables, and so on and so forth. An example you can think of is registration. When you're writing test to register a user, if database is not flashed out every single time before you run your test, you cannot reuse the same ID, user ID, or email. because it already exists on the system, and most probably the system will not allow you to create another test with with the same username or user ID. And then, of course, like as I mentioned, variables, and there is also data-driven testing, where like eventually it becomes pretty prevalent in a lot of cases when you need to test certain things through the full flow, but with the different data. This is what's called data-driven testing. Well, you're using data sets in order to execute exactly the same test with different data sets. Anyway, so what are the best practices for test automations? Well, multiple. As I mentioned, I do not claim that at least all of them. So as you continue in your journey of learning test automation, you will get much more than that. But those which I listed here are the most basic ones. What people usually consider a good practice. First of all, test ends with validation. Well, it's pretty easy to explain. If you have certain steps, and at the end, let's say you click some button, you want to make sure that after you click that button, you got to a place where you wanted to go. Or because otherwise you do not know if this button actually did anything in the first place. Maybe you clicked on it and it didn't do anything, and there is actually a bug and you don't know about it. We as humans tend to automatically do that, and if you click a button, we can assess if it did anything. But when you're doing automation, you need to do everything explicitly. Unless you explicitly told the system to do that, it's not going to do anything for you. Second best practice is to make tests as stable as possible, and particularly stable enough to be used in CI/CD. Well, the goal of automation is to help basically to deliver functionality to production as fast as possible. And if your tests are stable enough, so they can be executed, let's say, on every engineer's change and provide meaningful feedback, then it's definitely what provides the maximum value of your tests. The next is tests is very easy to understand. And that is, again, people eventually would forget about it, but again, at some point, you'll get back to it. Trust me, it is exceptionally important, irregardless of what you're doing and what you need to do. Because eventually systems under test change, and you or someone else needs to update the code which had been written. And the easier it is to understand, and trust me, you will forget even your own code after some time. Well, it's just saving yourself time in order to understand like what needs to be tested. So that's definitely a best practice. And then, of course, making tests requiring as little maintenance as is technically possible. If there are some minute engineering changes going on and you don't need to change your test, that's great. It saves everyone's time and actually dramatically improves the value of the test, because if you can provide verification that for an end user in your end-to-end test, everything still works and engineering is changing, like UI framework or certain controls around and stuff like that. If your test can still go through and provide valuable results, that is great. You're basically increasing the value of your test. And next is test is independent and can run in parallel with all other tests. that is very, very tricky. Like I will talk about it in a second. It's just there are alter risks to this, in a sense. This is basically at some point when you're writing a test, the number of tests will be so large that it will take a lot of time to execute your tests. And if it's will pass certain threshold, then people would want to speed it up in order to be able to extract more value, because the faster you can run the test, the more value you can get out of it. And at some point, if you're dealing with UI testing, the only way to speed up tests would be to parallelize tests, because UI tests are inherently slow. It's just like browser loads of things, rendering. It takes all it takes a little bit of time. So at the end, it's just end up is a lot of time executing tests, and nothing you can do about it. So even if you are executing in the fastest browsers and the most powerful machine, it's just end up with as fast as network connection, server can respond, a browser can render things, and that's it. And people were for parallelizing tests, and one of the ways to parallelize tests, probably the most reliable, is to create all the data which you need for your tests in the test itself. So you create all the data which you rely on in the test itself. Well, the problem with that is, and this is why I was saying that there is an alter risk to that, is it might take quite some time to create all the data. It might actually take more time than the test itself. So it is actually a balancing act. You would want to create the data in such a way that your test will be stable. However, if you can rely on some data existent in your database already, you can, and sometimes it's good to do in order to be able to speed up your test. So it's a lot of it's a common sense, and you need to assess what and how will affect your test stability. So it's a balancing act, but the point being is it should be good enough to be run in parallel. How will you rely specifically on test data? You have to investigate this. That's basically the job. Like you'll have to assess and figure out on your own. And then, of course, keeping things secure and credentials stored separately from the test itself, so that they're not exposed in the test. And in addition to just being more secure, it just actually simplifies your own life, because tomorrow you like security will change the credentials on a test system, and if you need to just change it in one place, it's much better and easier compared to you going through all the tests and fixing all the tests separately. All right. And there is, of course, increasing usage of AI in order to help out with the test, and like AI can be used in multiple ways. I just listed here, so you can use it for test generation, element detection, assistance in writing tests, test adaptation to minor changes, and of course, you can't adapt to large changes because you don't know if it's a feature or bug. So it's not that AI cannot do it; it's just not nonsensical. And automatic issue detection. All right, so I'll show you a demo and I'll walk you through how to take advantage of testRigor. So first of all, you can go to testRigor.com, and if you click sign up, there are several versions you can use. There is a private version which has a free trial. So for 2 weeks you can use it for free. So everything you do here is private, and if you are doing it for a company and not for yourself, you should use private version, so nothing is shared with everyone else. And there is a public open source version, which is completely free forever. Um, the limitation here is that everything is shared. Your test executions are recorded and published as videos. And so it's not applicable for commercial testing. However, you can, for your personal learning, it is a huge advantage, because not only you can use it for free forever, but also you can share your results of your tests with your manager, for example, or anything like that, if you want to show off your newly acquired test automation skills. Anyway, so let me take 10 more minutes, and let's go through an example illustrating some test automation concepts. So let's go to Twitter. And let's create a test for Twitter to basically for parts of the sign up. We will create automatically an account. Well, we'll go through some steps to create an account in Twitter. We'll not finish it, but we'll do some of the tests. But you can go to testRigor once you created the account, and you just specify URL. Give test suite a name. Usually, test suite name would reflect the URL. That means that it will reflect your test environment. It could be something staging, something UAT, and so on and so forth. And the system can generate tests for you. We'll just keep one. Up, we already have that. Okay, so I will very quickly go through for some steps, and then we'll jump deeper into how to make a sequence of steps a test and what's the difference. All right, so if you click here, start new recording. Well, testRigor is not record and play. It is plain English as executable language. However, we have this plugin to help you to record some steps before you convert it into the test. All right, let's click sign up. Here, let's select some date. No, I need to use email. Here we will use some random email because we will have to change it anyway. Remember, Twitter will not allow us to reuse the same email. Next, sign up, and then it will ask for verification code. This is as far as we can go here. So we will stop it. And so create an account. And testRigor can detect automatically if you need to be logged in. In this case, it's misfire. We don't need that. Here should be email. That's it. I click add and run. So we get back. This is auto-generated one, and this is ours. And I'll just cancel it because I don't want it to run. We need to clean it up more. So here what we have is a sequence of steps that is not yet a test because it does not have the properties of a test. Specifically, it will not run the second time is probably the largest issue in here. So Twitter will not allow you to reuse the same email second time, and therefore it's not repeatable. So that is the largest difference between what you would usually have in a manual test case and how you would make your test case automated. So you would need to make sure that your test is repeatable and it can run more than once. So this is definitely something number one, which we would need to change. And again, since it is all in English, like you from now on you'll be dealing with this as English. And of course, you would want to consult the documentation. For that, there is this link above this edit field where it goes. So here, and what we need to do is we need to generate unique email. There's a command exactly for that. You can just literally copy it and replace our stuff. So what this command does is that instead of using fixed email, it will generate the unique email, then enter it into email field, and it will save it into a variable for future references. So actually, there are several concepts in here. So there is a unique data generation in order to make a test repeatable, and it is the use of the variable. And here, let's go ahead and use that variable. Oops.
Nice. So here we don't need to write any complex logic or any random email generation logic. Automatically will be taken care by this.
So here, here what we do is we checking that email has been received.
Mhm.
And yeah, Navin is, of course, absolutely correct. Let's update this test and run and see how it will execute up to this point. So what testRigor does when you start the test like this is it will start a new server, it will start the browser, and then it will load the landing page, which you specified when you created the test suite. In this case, it's twitter.com. And then after that, it will start executing steps emulating how a human would do it. Anyway, so as you can see, it succeeded. Here you can see like steps, and it would highlight where to click. And here it generated this long email, which is unique. And click next, and so on and so forth, all the way till here. It would be asking for verification code, and we use that variable, this email, in order to check the email, and this is our email.
Oh.
And basically, now next step would be to just get the code from email, enter it in Twitter, and continue registration. So let's just do that, and we need to get this code somehow from the page. And there are a couple of ways how you can do it. Like, think about it. How would you do it as a human? And there are like a couple of clues in here how you could do it. First of all, you can say, hey, like this is some text which is below or this paragraph, or you can rely on the fact that the format of this thing is 6 digits. So you can rely on either or, and I will rely on paragraph and say, hey, like with below this paragraph, but I don't want to write the whole paragraph. I just want to get something below this verification code, although I can't use just verification code because it also appears on the top in the subject. So I have to do a little bit more and say like this verification code. Hopefully that's unique enough to identify this paragraph. And for that, you just write grab value from text below this verification code. And save it as code. So as you can see, there is another use of another variable. So the previous one was used for email, and you can think of variable as a box with a label. So you can put some value into the box, but it is labeled. In this case, it's labeled new email. Oops. And here it will be labeled code, but you can refer to the value inside the box by this label. Let's see if we will do that going forward. So we switch back to Twitter from our email, and then we enter. So we can't say enter code, verification code, because then it will literally verbatim enter the word code, C-O-D-E. So we need to use this as a reference to actual code which we stored, and we stored it in a variable, and the way to refer to that variable to that box with actual code is to use stored value keyword, and then say, hey, enter stored value code into verification code, and that's it. Let's click update and retest and see how that's going to go. While we're waiting, and I'll answer a couple of questions I see here. Like scalability of tool like testRigor, what's the maximum amount of tests being handled in a live environment? We have customers having tens of thousands of tests per test suite, and there is no limitation. You can have as many as you'd like. Again, as soon as you're executing them in parallel, it is actually usable. All right. Okay, so here, as you can see, like we highlighted the text, which was a referral text, which contained this verification code, and we say, hey, get text below, and it highlighted the text which is being taken. In this case, this. It is 334678 in this particular run. And of course, as you can imagine, it would be different every time. And 334678, it entered in there. So I will not continue here because our goal is not to create fake accounts on Twitter. Our goal is to just show some concepts. And of course, as you can see, this is still not a test because we are lacking the validation at the end.
Correct.
So in order to finish this, you would want to finish the steps and then to add validation at the end. For example, in this particular example, if you are creating a test to sign up, then at the end of sign up, you would want to validate that sign up was successful. And it's very interesting how to do that, because technically you would do two things. So first you check that you get a message that you signed in, which is great, but then you'll probably want to log out and use the credentials which you have created in order to be able to log in using that credentials. And that would actually de facto prove that not only your sign-up process worked, but it actually also produced the credentials which can be used going forward. So as you can see, it's now getting into just test creation. So all the skills which you already have in order to be able to write proper test cases, they still apply. It's just those additional concepts which you would need to add to write will help you to practice your actual automation. And this is how automated test is different from a manual test. So everything you know will apply. It's just additional concepts, which I believe probably the easiest way to practice is with testRigor. And then since once you learn those concepts, you can apply it across the board with any tool going forward.
Correct.
All right. So on that, this is it for me, and I'm open to answer questions.
Great, guys. So thank you so much, Artem. And that looks so easy to see this, especially this OTP scenario, that verification code scenario. Because if you do the exactly same thing with Selenium or other other tool, we have to use some third-party library to read the email from, let's say, Gmail or anything, and then we have to read it. We have to use a lot of regular expressions for that, or maybe some third-party API. We have to use that, and then we have to use it in Selenium actually. So that's really great. Like only one single statement is actually solving the problem and capturing the value from there. That's, yeah. So like one of the toughest scenario we actually face in Selenium, and that with two lines of code, I mean 2 lines of sentence, that you actually solved it with the testRigor. That's really great to see that. So yeah, we have some questions, guys. If you have any questions with respect to testRigor or anything, feel free to ask. We can take some questions with respect to automation also if you have that. So one question Ganesh is asking: is it possible to run test in hybrid way, UI plus API test in the same test case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in a lot of test cases, that would be the case. It's pretty common to have API and UI steps in the same test. So I'm sharing the screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So basically, again, you can click documentation in here, and there is a section there called API testing, and contains a lot of different examples on like how to do API tests, and we can just literally copy paste this example. I'm probably not going to run it, but just to illustrate the point. So as you can see, you'll just have additional calls in here. And Ganesh, thank you for the question. I should have probably mentioned that it's another sometimes kind of hack slash common practice to validate certain things using API, and sometimes to set up the data and preconditions using API in the beginning of the test. So definitely it is used pretty widely.
Great. Yeah. So the second question: what type of test cases we can automate using testRigor?
For the testRigor is designed to help our customers to test end-to-end tests for UI. So you'll get the most value if you're testing some kind of UI, be it web or mobile, or web and mobile and API in the same test. Basically, think of it like you need to write an end-to-end test that involves some UI, and this is where you'll get the most of value, and you can use, as you can see, you can use emails, you can use text messages, phone calls, Google Authenticator in order to be able to log in into Gmail and test, for example, your login with Gmail functionality, and switch between web and mobile, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So can we automate Captcha also?
No. So this is the whole point of Captcha, is to prevent automation.
Yep.
And if you are dealing with your own application which you are testing, then there is always a way to turn off Captcha one way or another. We will support all of those. Sometimes you can pass some cookie or HTTP header, or there's a lot of other ways how our customers allow themselves to turn off Captcha on test environment, or sometimes even on production environment. And because it is your own application which you are testing, you can turn off cookies. So we at this point we turn off. We are a testing tool. We're not a spamming tool, so we don't have functionality to overcome
Yep.
Captcha.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of Captcha, to prevent automation and to prevent the bots. So better to disable the Captcha in the lower environment, in your test environment, and then test it. Okay, so another question that we have, Dalana asking, can you show us how to integrate database and execute SQL queries?
Yes, absolutely. You can do that as well. However, I want to warn you, that is not a best practice. Because if you think about it, your database is basically the kind of deepest level and the most details of implementation which is used by engineers, and they basically can change it at any moment, and you don't want your test to fail if database changes. However, testRigor, of course, supports database integration. Let me see if I can find it. And yep, there's the JDBC database in here. So there's a lot of stuff out of the box, and others, I believe, like a more generic ones are also available. If something's not available, you can let us know, but it's just almost anything you can access right now. And of course, you can go to the documentation, and the section is called SQL testing. And there are some examples once you set up your connection to the database, how you can run queries in order to get your data from the database.
Okay. So we can take another thing. Rahul is asking how reliable the test cases will be when there are multiple applications in the test flow. For example, in case of integration testing. For example, let's say there are two different domains or two different cross-origin policies like that, from ABC application to XYZ application.
Yeah, the whole point of testRigor is to make it as stable and reliable as you executing it manually. So in particular, not only like basically the way testRigor works is abstracts and does the things from a user's perspective, but it also helps you with test stability. For example, if a browser crashes, and testRigor will automatically restart the test, and it'll try again. Like it's timeouts and stuff like that. It will basically catch all those kind of issues and will retry automatically up to 3 times in order to help you to keep your tests stable and make sure whatever is related to infrastructure but not to your test does not affect your test. So, like, but as soon as a human can execute a test, a testRigor test should be able to go through the same way. So it definitely quite stable in that sense.
Correct, correct. Okay, so I'm taking the questions only for test rigor point of view, not for Selenium. I think one more question that I see here once again. Okay, yeah, this one. So Divya is asking, can the capture data be hidden for security, just like in case of OTP or credentials? Like the capture data, that verification code is, let's say, hidden for the security reasons. So
Yes,
can
of
we?
course. Let me share the screen again. So basically, then you're creating your application. There is a way to provide a username and password. So you can see typing here, password is hidden, and uh, then you can also use the test data. And when you create test data here, if you need, for example, additional passwords, there is a hidden variable, meaning that whatever is this is a name. There's a name of it, but the value of it will be hidden. As you can see, you can't see it, but of course, you can refer to it as the same way as you refer to any variable saying, hey, enter stored value password 2 into
Hmm,
something.
okay. But I think she's asking with respect to the email verification code
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah, yes, of
So,
course.
hmm,
So here is by, like you mean the
yeah.
screenshot. So the code, as you can see, it is not visible by default.
Hmm,
However, like you can see this one-time code on a screenshot.
yeah.
Um, Although in this particular scenario, it is only applicable one time and it is immediately used, so you can't use the same code second time. So in this particular case, it is okay.
Okay.
And if you need to use some kind of credentials which are repeatable, I showed the ways to make them hidden.
Mhm. Okay. So next question again, Ganesh is asking, is it possible to send a notification alert to Slack or Teams when a test is getting failed?
And answer is yes. You guys basically are going through the features of testRigor. So there is in settings, there is a section called notifications.
Hmm.
In notifications, as default is email. When you are creating the account, you specify the email. But of course, you can do the Slack or Microsoft Teams for notifications. And of course, you can either send it always or only if test fails.
Great. Okay. Shashikant is asking at a time how many test cases we can execute.
It is unlimited. If you go to here and I click rerun, you'll execute all of your test cases. testRigor, even as a commercial tool, we do not charge for number of test cases. You can have as many as you like.
Hmm. Okay. So guys, if you have any questions with respect to test rigor or Any questions with respect to testRigor syntax and anything, feel free to ask. I think what is testRigor path? I think selectors
Yeah.
have been using testRigor path somewhere. Maybe he picked that down.
Yeah. So like one of the ways how to record tests is to use Test Case Studio. And that like this is where probably Vikas picked it up. Basically, testRigor path is a way to express how to refer to elements. Let me give you some example here. So this is a little bit more complex format here, and in a simple scenario, just the name, for example, of the button. If you click account settings, then account settings string itself is the path, because that's enough of information to find these account settings on the screen and click on it. Same with enter product into search products. That's a trivial example. You can also use first name and refer to this input below. And in this case, first name would be a path for this input, even though it is some kind of a text in there. However, like I'm showing this screen because there are multiple identical update buttons on the screen. So now it is becoming a little bit more interesting. And you can't just say click update, because which update? I mean, you can, it will just click on the first one. However, if you want to click on the second update and not the first one, how do you do that? And this is where this path, or basically a way to refer to that element, is a little bit more interesting. So think about it. How would you do it yourself as a human? How would you tell someone to click on this button and not on that one?
Yeah, something on the basis of some label like below change your password or below personal information. Like that.
Yes, exactly. So and you can do that in testRigor. So you can say click update below change your password. You can also say click second update, or you can combine those and say things like click second update in account settings section, or click update and change your password section. It will understand what you're trying to say and will execute. And that whole construct, second update in account settings section, is the testRigor path.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's thanks, Vikas. Thanks for asking this. So
Great
we
question.
have another question that Hiteksha is asking: can we check report on test cases which are failed in the past?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, testRigor provides additional functionality there. So first of all, there is a report section. You can see different reports overall and broke down by different browsers. And you also have a breakdown by labels. You can see, okay, so for this label, and you can assign any labels to any test, of course. You can see like how it is it broke down for labels. And most importantly, testRigor also extracts unique issues for you. Because think about it, let's say you have 1,000 tests, and then some change from engineering failed 500 of those. What you care about and what you need to provide to engineering is not that, hey, you broke 500 of my tests, but nobody cares about that. You need to tell engineering what issues did they introduce. And testRigor helps with that. It extracts unique issues. As you can see here, so this issue affected 3 tests. So in case in that example, which I have provided, there might be only just 2 issues, one affecting 1 test and one affecting 500 tests. So in this case, like this issue affected 3 tests, and there are steps to reproduce here with an issue like when on the screen of the issue, you'll see the screenshot of previous run and screenshot of current run. And of course, you can create a Jira issue with one click. If you already did that, it will be associated here. You'll be able to access it with one click as well. So just making it as simple as possible. Or if you'd like to just share the URL, and again, testRigor does not charge by number of users, so you can actually share the URL to this unique issue with engineers and just give them that URL and say, hey, check this out. So this is the issue. You can also do that thing as well.
Good. So let's quickly take another question. Rupa is asking that IVR voice calls, can we automate that?
IVR voice calls. What is IVR?
So I think it's a IVR voice call that I think it's not doable with this thing, because when you do a voice call and the voice call is coming like just some through devices or something, when you call it and then that's converting into a voice call, can we automate certain things? I'm not sure about it.
No, we actually do support that. I can show you in documentation. So there is a section for phone calls. Well, hold on a second. It's not phone calls.
Yeah, it's not phone call.
Audio.
Maybe
It's an
audio
audio
testing.
testing.
Audio
Yes, it's
testing.
audio testing. Basically, what you can do is you can play audio on web or mobile, as well as you can capture the audio and then compare it to some samples and do things like that. We do have some telecom companies as our customers, and they test their audio using those features. So yes, you can do that.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so next question is that Vishak is asking, can we also manage complex application flow using it? What are the limitations of this tool?
So basically, testRigor had been designed to deal with forms and tables. This is where you'll get the most value. You'll be able to express working with forms and tables purely from a user's perspective, avoiding all those overhead related to internal changes. And that it's basically strong suit and a limitation at the same time. For example, testRigor is not applicable to test games. I know
Mm-hmm.
the Paul Grossman automated some games with testRigor. It's just like was a shocker to me. This is not technically supported. You probably will struggle a little bit. I'm sure there are much easier way to automate testing games compared to testRigor. So testRigor is basically had been designed to help our customers to test business applications.
Okay. So this is also another question that yeah, can we use XPath or CSS selectors to interact web elements, or it's not at all needed?
You will not need that. The whole point of testRigor is that we help you to avoid use XPath or CSS selector. Because if you're using XPath or CSS selector, you're relying on how page was implemented as opposed to how does it work from end user's perspective. And we provide all plethora of tools. As soon as you can express referring to some element in English as a human, you will be able to basically tell it to testRigor. So we help you to avoid using XPaths and CSS selectors. That's the whole point of testRigor.
Yep, that makes sense. So, does it have any else clause? Sohail is asking to identify negative statement like check the status of any checkbox in UI and proceed on next validation. Like something like this, like if else condition. Can we maintain that?
So, like, there are a couple of parts I feel like to this question. So, first of all, there is a part related to validations.
Yeah, below loops actually.
Yes, thank you. And of course, you can do negative validation and say things like check that page doesn't contain certain things, or color is not black, or is not red, and so on and so forth, like anything you can think of. This is one part. Second, related to kind of conditional logic and loops and conditions and all this kind of stuff. You can do that. So there is a advanced section, and where you can use JavaScript on top of testRigor in order to do basically anything you can think of. However, it will make it more code rather than plain English. It will make it much, much harder for people to understand, and therefore will reduce collaboration. For example, well, maybe engineers will still be able to understand that. However, your colleagues who are not engineers might not, and product managers who can otherwise just go ahead and review your steps and say, yes, this is exactly what I had in mind, would no longer be able to do that. So we advise our customers to try to avoid using coding on top of testRigor as much as possible.
Okay. So does it support any PDF validations also? We have another question like download PDF and verify the field fill down UI of that particular form or any PDF signature form or something.
Yes, you can upload and download files, and in the basic command sections section, if you find this check, there is also an example here. Drum roll. Yes, so there's an example here of downloaded file. Once you clicked on something and download PDF, so you can say, hey, check a downloaded file. This one does not or does contain certain things. And you don't, like, this one actually does two validations. So first of all, it validates that there is a file like this with this name. If your file name is always different, you can just avoid using any specific file and just do validations on the file itself, or you can just validate that the file was downloaded without validating its content.
That's nice. Okay. So we have another question that can we achieve parallel execution as well?
That is how testRigor works out of the box. All tests are executed in parallel. Well, as soon as you are paying for prioritizations, so as many prioritizations you purchase, like those would be used to execute all your tests in parallel. So this is a business model for testRigor. You're paying basically for infrastructure. But
Correct.
yes, so you don't need to do anything literally. You can just get more parallelization, and it'll automatically execute your tests faster because it will automatically parallelize.
Perfect. And another question that does it support auto heal mechanism for easy maintenance during object property changes, or it really doesn't matter to test trigger?
So yes, this is a great question.
Yeah.
And what I would like to point out is you probably heard about these self-healing, auto-healing concepts from other tools. testRigor doesn't need that because testRigor way to referring to element is several orders of magnitude more stable compared to auto-healing by other tools. Because think about it. Let's say you need to click on this button, and the way other tools would do that is by using XPath, CSS selectors, and stuff like that. And once those changes, they would attempt to heal those properties, which is like 50-50, and sometimes might result in false positives, where it auto-healed to something which you did not meant to, or oftentimes it wouldn't be able to even auto-heal at all. Whereas in testRigor, we just don't do it at all. As soon as your specification from end user's perspective is still correct, testRigor will execute it. So as soon, for example, if you said click on the second update button, as soon as there are still two update buttons on the screen, and then testRigor will be able to find the second one and click on it.
Exactly, because let's see, the update button, second update button got shifted towards left side or right side, or maybe between these two update buttons, more elements got added. So definitely the XPath and the CSS might get changed. But I think in testRigor, it is always so, so smartly it will capture that below change password. Doesn't matter the position of the update button. Yeah. Okay. So another question. We can take some 2-3 questions more, right? Artem, it's fine.
Any number of questions, please.
Great, great. That's great. So can we run application on testRigor that requires VPN?
Yes, there are several ways our customers do it right now. There is like starting from as simple as just IP whitelisting of our proxies. Yeah, then where you can establish tunnel into your VPN in order for testRigor to be able to access environment under test. Or you can deploy the whole testRigor on-premise for some banks and stuff like that, if that's another way to do it.
Yeah, because some people actually were asking about, personally to me as well, that because what are the test cases we are running and the screenshots and everything is coming on your environment, on your cloud, especially for the banking application or fintech applications, they don't allow to do that. So how to convince the management in order to take testRigor?
Yeah, so well, first of all, testRigor is SOC 2 compliant, so that usually covers all of the questions and concerns from security. However, if that's not enough, you can just deploy all testRigor with all its features in your environment.
Great. Yeah. So any other question, guys, if you have it? I think we have taken all the questions. Great. Then thank you so much, Artem. I think if you really want to add something else, feel free to add. Otherwise, I think we are done with the questions.
It looks like there is another question.
Okay. Yeah, we can. Does it support desktop application as well?
So that support is coming very soon. Stay tuned. I will announce once we will release it to public. Whereas
Great.
I think there is another question by Vinay above.
Yeah. I would like to know if test cases has API and DB validation, how to configure JDBC.
Look at
I think that we have already
how to
taken.
configure. Okay, so yeah, this is already shown as it's in the settings and integrations, and it is called JDBC database. So this is how you connect to your database. An API is you don't need to connect to anything. You just can write your API with all the parameters as a command, and that's it. You don't need to do anything. Once you connect it to database, once you provided the set up the connection, then you can use SQL testing in order to run SQL. So database testing would require setting up a connection to your database. API doesn't need anything. You can just run it.
Yeah, but any authentication header or something, then we can pass in the header section. That is fine.
It's all in. It's in integration itself. If you are, where is it? So once you're creating it, you provide the name of it, and there are username and password. The password, of course, is hidden in order to connect to the database.
Great. So next one is
I think yes. Can you automate mobile applications? And the answer is yes. Let me find an example. Yeah, so this is web and mobile. So basically, once you have created a test suite, it will be a test suite where you specify your APK or mobile file here. As you can see, you can specify native or hybrid mobile application when you create a new test suite. And once you did that, then you can use exactly the same instructions. And where you go and basically do the same stuff. It will understand the context. If you're trying to do click on the mobile, it understands you actually meant to do tap. However, you can say tap something to make it a little bit more readable. And this is example where we switch between mobile and web. We started as mobile, loaded mobile application. When we switched to browser and went somewhere and did something on some website, and then we switched back to mobile application and tapped on a button on the mobile application. So definitely yes, and you can mix and match it with web and mobile, and let me show you how it looks like. So it's just very straightforward. If you started from mobile, when you just start the browser and switch there, when you go to URLs, because remember, if you have a mobile test suite, then your point of reference is actually mobile application, so you don't have the URL, so you have to specify URL. When you do actions on the URL, and then you switch back to your device, which you downloaded, and then you continue to work device, then you can switch back to web and back and forth, call APIs, and do anything you would want to.
Great. So another question is that can we use testRigor in place of Zira?
Well, unfortunately not, because Jira is issue tracking software.
Yeah.
So basically, let me pull up, where is it?
Zira is full of project management and bug tracking also, and test management.
Yeah, exactly. So in Jira, like Jira just covers processes before testRigor and after testRigor. Think about it. Yes, testRigor will find you some issues, and like there is a way to do the issues here. However, there is no place in testRigor for product managers to design new functionality without actually creating a test. We can get to that in a second. I'll show you one thing, but still, like, this is not how our processes are done. Usually, like, people are organizing things and tickets for functionality. Not only that, but also you'd want to make sure your tool allows you to work in the Scrum. So as a part of an iteration, You would want to select the tickets you would want to work on, assign them, and so on and so forth. It's like just completely different functionality in Jira compared to what testRigor does. However, I think what this question is about is test case management. There are a couple of test case management tools that integrate into Jira to allow people to manage their test cases in Jira, and there are Zephyr and X-Ray. So those tools are built on top of Jira. Sometimes people even call them Jira, like, hey, we have our test cases in Jira, but what they actually mean is they use either Zephyr or X-Ray plugin in Jira in order to manage the test cases. And testRigor integrates into that, of course. And now you can basically hook up and associate test cases on testRigor with test cases in Jira through Zephyr or X-Ray. And once you run test cases on testRigor, you'll get statuses reflected into Zephyr or X-Ray or any other test case management tool. So this is one thing. And now I'd like to explain that alter risk, which I was mentioning, that I was saying that product managers, like, this is not exactly the product management tool. However, you can organize the thing in such a way that product managers might be able to just create their specifications directly in testRigor. How to do that? So first of all, your product manager is probably very unlikely to write those detailed steps themselves. However, if you can basically, what you can do is you can create what we call reusable rules. So you might call functions. If you go to reusable rules sections, paste in here and call it fill out the sign form. And we click save and replace. We select what we want to replace. Come back. So you have basically created a function, and now it's much, much shorter and more readable, right? So all of this dealing with the form is one short and sweet function which you can use. And the number one way how our customers are actually using testRigor is once they created the longest step through, we can record the longest step through their applications, then they extract those reusable rules, and in general basically create those reusable rules as much as possible to reflect their own terminology, which they use in their own test cases. So literally go to your own test cases, copy paste the name of test case, and then specify what does it mean. For example, if you're testing Amazon, what does it mean to check out? What does it mean to add to cart? And so on and so forth. So once you have this terminology outlined, then you can literally start copy pasting the test cases into testRigor, and with as little cleanup as it's technically possible. You would need to make sure that the terminology used exactly as in your reusable rule, every term is on a new line, and so on and so forth. But it's literally technically as little as possible. You can basically make your own test cases automated as quickly as possible. There's literally no faster way to automate your test cases as to copy paste them and make them executable.
Correct. Okay, so I think we are almost done. One last thing, people are interesting to know that who all are using testRigor. Can you like give some company's name and who are the different customers and the clients?
Yeah, you might need some, might know some companies which are customers, such as Netflix, Splunk, BusinessWire. We have some smaller banks you probably don't know. Oh, but even small banks have thousands of people working for a bank, right? There is no such thing as a small bank; is very large. And yeah, tons of Fortune 1000 companies.
Great. So, like a couple of people are asking that how's the job market for testRigor? Do we have any job opportunities with testRigor in the market currently?
We are some time ago we have released basically whatever is kind of like a marketplace to find a job on testRigor, because we have a lot of customers and we oftentimes need help on writing tests. However, we temporarily paused it and turned it down in order to improve experience for everyone involved. In particular, we are working on a certification. So you would need to go through certification in order to prove that you know the available features and testRigor tool before we allow our customers to contact you to write tests. However, that is something we're working on, and it will be coming back online hopefully very soon.
Oh, that's really good. So something like some certification also from testRigor, it will be there in the future that you are testRigor certified
Yeah.
or something.
Yes, exactly. So like we just literally are like it's almost where like the smallest things you can think of taking the longest time for no particular reason, that is we're getting very close.
Yep. Okay, so one last question that Divya is again asking that some bank projects have concern to integrate and use it in their application testing. Do you provide any separate support to use this tool instead of testing in your cloud?
Yes, for the banks, we can give the a way to deploy it in a bank network, so we
Hmm.
can get this trigger tool deploy inside bank network with potentially with no access to the internet whatsoever, and
Oh,
you will be able to use test trigger 100% internally.
that's really great, Divya. You can try and you can do a POC on testRigor, and then you can show this to the management and then start using it. Yeah, I think that's all for today, Artem. I think that's all we have done with respect to questions. So thank you so much once again for joining, and then I hope more and more features will be there in testRigor, and then we can have more lives, YouTube lives together. And yeah,
Sounds great. Happy to be here, and hopefully we covered all of the questions.
yeah. So we can take this one also. So Hill is asking, sorry, on last moment, I'm working with testRigor actively. Sometimes through recording, few things are not getting caught, especially SVG icons and any word on that.
Yes, absolutely. So you have to keep in mind testRigor is not record and play tool.
Hmm.
Like it is plain English tool, so we don't invest that much into our plugin. Um, Sanjay's plugin probably work much better than ours because he actually invests into expanding it much more than ours. So basically, but let me explain you what's challenges in general, and with let me pull up some example. So basically, the example is using those icons on top, right?
Yeah.
testRigor will automatically create relative locations. For example, if you click on this one, it will say click on first button, on the right of hide Jane, or like for this one, second button, and so on and so forth. However, it does not know your application. And there is really good chance that it would completely be wrong with specifying the correct relative location and stuff like that, because this is not what we were looking for. For example, if you click on this update button, it will most probably will record it as click update above number given in store, because this text is closer to this button than this section name, which is, if you think about it, this is not what you want. So you want it to say click update in change your password section or below change your password, because that makes logical sense in your application, but the recorder doesn't know about it, and therefore it just sometimes guesses incorrectly. It just guesses based on some very straightforward simple rules. And unfortunately, we can't make this guessing much more complex because it runs in your browser, and if you make it way too complex, your browser will be crashing, because like it'll just start hanging every time you do anything. So unfortunately, we can't overinvest in that part, and sometimes therefore it's a little bit too trivialistic. So this is one. Second, testRigor employs machine learning based image classification, which you can enable in order to say things like click user, click map, click card, just based on how those images look. However, testRigor does not record this when you try to do that, because again, exactly same issue. Unfortunately, we cannot run machine learning in the browser because the browser will be crashing. It's just too much of a processor load when we're running machine learning models, and therefore, even though you can later on edit those images, like those actions, and say, hey, click map, if you enabled this setting to process like based on ML classification, you unfortunately won't record it for you.
Correct.
So you can improve it later on, but yes, our recorder is very much limited. As I mentioned, I'm sure like Sanjay's test case studio would do oftentimes better job.
Yeah.
So please try that. If our own one does not do good enough job for you, like we do support Sanjay's test case studio. We trying to make sure it works with testRigor as much as it can.
Yeah, even I was testing with the test case studio. There are slightly couple of issues. Maybe some entries are coming duplicate or 2 or 3 times. But I think other than that, it's really working very smoothly, and it's creating the exact test trigger path and syntax. So that's, I think, very interesting to know in future how exactly the integration is happening with the test trigger and the test case studio. And yeah, thank you so much, like Sanjay, also like creating that tool and then integrating with test trigger. That's really like amazing to see that. So a lot of like it's like almost automation done. You don't need to write anything. You don't need to remember the exact plain English a sentence. Also, you just like everything is test case. The studio is doing it, and simple you click on button and then running the test case on test trigger environment. That, I think, really good to know. Great. I think that's all for today, Artem. We are almost like everything we have covered so far for the questions and everything. People are really appreciating it. Uh, Still, guys, if you have any questions, you can contact to Artem on LinkedIn, and you can just directly mail me. Also, I can forward your email to Artem, and then if you really want to do a POC with Artem or on testRigor, definitely we can do that as well. And then just mail me and inform me, or maybe put in the comment section. We can contact to testRigor team and directly to Artem, and then just start using it. It's freely available, and then if you really want to do a POC on it, just go for it and then start using it. It saves a lot of time. I think, yeah, that's really great tool. Artem, I think you are on mute.
Yes, I apologize. So basically, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. In particular, if you are waiting for this desktop testing, I'll be announcing it on LinkedIn and trying to pull in the URL of my profile. You can find me by just Artem Golubev. This is my picture. You probably you'll see that I'm in testRigor, so there's only one Artem Golubev in testRigor, at least as of now. So you'll be able to find it. This is how profile looks like. If you'd like, use the URL of the profile. Can somehow probably share it.
You
I'm
can
not
directly
sure.
share it. Otherwise, I'll share it. I'll share it.
Okay, thank you, Navin.
Great.
So feel free to connect. I'm always accepting all connections, and you can ask sometimes some questions if you'd like to.
Great. So, guys, we have around 6 to 7 videos from my side. Also, I have already prepared on testRigor. We just start using it and start looking into those videos, and then more and more interesting videos are coming with respect to API automation, mobile automation, and some amazing other features also that we can do with the testRigor. So we will continue that series, and every 2 weeks we are releasing one video on testRigor. Just go and then watch those videos. I'm sure it will you will love this particular tool, and its amazing features are available in that tool. So with this note, thank you so much, Arte, once again for joining us today, and thank you everyone also, guys, joining on Saturday evening. So thank you so much, and then take care, guys.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.